Hello, Socrates at Saddlebrook. Well, I'm delighted to be back in my consulting dress once again and free to not have to pitch the standard dogma of the Institute. And I'm excited to report that after I was let go by management, interest in attending the Socrates Forum has grown dramatically. I'm free to be an independent thinker again. Now, I hope you've picked up my little charade here. I really wasn't employed by a government-funded institute. My little skit here was my way of demonstrating the bias that's in the system today that keeps Darwinism immune from criticism. Intelligent design off the table, forced out of their positions, threatened and even fired from their jobs, had their careers discredited when they had even the nerve to challenge the received view of evolutionary biology. School districts have been sued for teachers who are referencing even the highest level technical journals on evolution if they question Darwinism. In fact, many teachers are not even allowed to discuss mainstream evolutionary science if it threatens the standard dogma. And if you really want to feel the heat, just look at the informed social media on this topic. The uninformed social media is even worse. But just ask a question on a site such as Quora. That's Quora, Quora.com, which is a very intellectual, skeptical site, and be somewhat skeptical about Darwinism. Ask a question like, what is the evidence that Darwinism is not true? It generates rage. What in the world are they afraid of? Evidential science advances by challenging standard paradigms in anything, not isolating them from criticism. It's dogma and propaganda that debilitate science, not legitimate skepticism. Well, today you will hear the scientific case for intelligent design and find out what this hullabaloo is all about. You'll discover that intelligent design is not challenging Darwinism with sugar plum fairy stories. No, it's legitimate evidentiary science. You'll also find out that intelligent design gets mischaracterized, then that straw man characterization is what is discredited. Or the attack is against the skeptic, the ad hominem attack. That's no way to argue a case. Today you will have the opportunity to see both sides and decide for yourself what direction you think the evidence points. For intelligent design, against intelligent design. So sit back, listen, think deeply. Let's pick up the beginning of the last forum at the beautiful Mountain View Country Club in Saddlebrook, Arizona. What we like to do at Socrates at Saddlebrook is think deep about stuff. So you're among people that take that as a challenge. I mean, sometimes we're just so involved and entertaining and taking sides and so forth. But Socrates taught us to ask questions. That's what he wanted to do. He was considered the smartest man in the world at the time because he didn't know any answers. He asked questions all the time. And that's how he gained his wisdom. And as he says here, the true wisdom comes to each of us when we realize how little we understand about life, ourselves, and the world around us. And I think at our age, we probably know that for a fact, right? When we were in our 20s, got it wired, everything was on track, and by 40, we're going to kill the world and so forth. And by 60, the world's killing us. And we're figuring, what's going on? We ask questions, the big questions. Like last season, we asked the big questions about, we're looking at origins. Well, what's the origin of the universe? What does science have to say about the origin of the universe? How about planet Earth? Is that just a speck of dust out there and all these James Webb telescope pictures, or is that a special place? We asked that question. We asked about the origin of life. We hear reports that life is being developed in the laboratory. Is that true? I mean, do we really produce life in the laboratory? Origin of the species. Darwin told us 150 years ago that everything traces back to a common ancestor. We talked about every one of those from both sides. So we looked at it. So there's 16 of these videos already on. This is thing number 16 online. So
if this kind of stuff really interests you, you'll hear things today that I'll be referring back. You weren't here, you said I need to dig into it. Check out the videos on www.socrates@saddlebrook.club. That's the tricky part, the .club part. This season, this is a whole continuing series of seven parts. We got through about 5.5 of them last season. We'll finish it up here, and it really concludes with, all right, we have origins, we have destiny. What does it really mean to be human? Are we just evolved chimp with no brain, no design, no purpose? Some say yes, some say no. So we're going to be digging into that. Today's discussion will be on the science that backs up one of the sides on that. And we'll be talking about something called intelligent design. And then the big question, right? This is all leading to the question of God. What bigger questions can there be? Does God exist or not exist? Those are opposing viewpoints. If one's right, then the other one's wrong. If that one's right, then this one's wrong. That really affects our worldview, how we see things, how we carry that. A lot of us might say, I don't know. I'm still an agnostic. Well, study it. Think deeply about this stuff, because time's running out on all of us. And as I understand, the rate of expiration is 100%. That's what I understand. So, in fact, somebody suggested I had to wear that as a badge. Put my expiration date on here with it blank, right? Socrates was known for always asking questions, as I said. And one of the most interesting facts I've learned about him is where he works out, where he pumped. Anybody know where that was? What gym did he work out at?
What city?
Good question. The why? No less. He always asks why. Oh, come on. No, that's pretty good. You are here with a worldview. Your worldview is you. That's your identity. I mean, that's how you think about things. That's how I think about things. When a new piece of information comes in, like, wow, today, what do I think about that? I filter it through my worldview. My worldview is a set of lenses that I put on to see things. And we all have a worldview. In this particular subject, I found that there's probably 4 worldviews that we're a blend of. If we're into creation, we know God is the creator, so the answer is obvious. God created, gave meaning and purpose, design and purpose. That's theism, right? The belief in God. Now, the opposite of that is atheism. Atheism, no theism, right? So there's no design and purpose to anything. Nature is all there is. If you remember Carl Sagan and all, the Cosmos series, if any of you were into that, I love that series. It was the factual Star Trek, let's put it that way. And Carl used to say, the universe is all there is, all there ever was, all there ever will be. Well, that's quite a statement. That's a worldview, right? That means the only thing that we know are the material things, the universe. And the only thing we can assess are things that we can feel, touch, see, 5 senses. Now, that's the evolutionary worldview is that there's no design and purpose to the universe. So the existentialists would say, well, then what you do is you screw up your courage and you face the universe and you just go grab all you can, right? Eat, drink, and be merry, for tomorrow we die. And that's certainly a worldview. That's a Stoic worldview. Now, there's folks that want to put evolution and creation, which actually pull in opposite directions, together. They say, well, God can work through evolution, and that's a very popular worldview. So that's an attempt to reconcile. So we call that theistic evolution. And today I'm going to introduce you to, if you're not familiar with this topic of intelligent design, which says that many aspects of life in the universe, are best explained by design and purpose. So what does that mean? Well, that's what we're going to discuss today. Intelligent design, let me give you a definition. Very simple definition from the very beginning here. It's a theory that certain features of the universe and life are best explained by an intelligent cause. Well, that makes sense. I'm always looking for cause. We know cause and effect. We know something doesn't come out of nothing. What's the best explanation for that? That's an example of a question from intelligent design. It's a question that Socrates would ask. So which features are we talking about that might exhibit an intelligent cause? This is what we discussed last season. Well, the universe had a beginning. I mean, before the universe, we thought the universe was infinitely large, infinitely old, went on forever and ever. Then all of a sudden, in the 20th century, science tells us, no, the Big Bang happened at a finite time ago. Finite time ago. So if you wind the clock back to that finite time, you have to ask, if that's t equals 0, what happened on the day before t equals 0, right? That was a legitimate question to ask. It's a philosophical question. Science doesn't know about that. Science stops when the mathematical equations stop or the testing stops. Testing stops at t equals 0. Number 2, the universe is finely tuned. We saw that the universe has some 250 or more variables. It's like a big control panel that it turned here, this is turned here, then we have a universe. Somebody comes in and fiddles the dial by a hairbreadth, everything disappears. Basically, that's what the science says. It's finely tuned. So the universe is, so what does that imply? Well, that implies the designer. Who set the dials? What set the dials from the very beginning? And if there's a beginning, there had to be a beginner. I don't know anything that begins without a beginner. And that's when you begin the beginning, right? Life, number 3, life cannot be produced from dead chemicals. Well, that's what so far the science is saying. It appears to require intelligent intervention to generate life, to develop life. Origin of the species, not fully explained any longer by Darwin's theory of evolution. In fact, inside nowhere where it was inside Darwinian evolution are calling for a revised theory or a new theory to displace it. That's why the intelligent design theory is on the table now as a competitive solution. And it's opposed, it's highly opposed. And you'll find that. Why is it highly opposed? Well, it challenges the spirit of the age. It challenges the received view. The received view is that nature is all there is, as explained by Carl Sagan. This implies a beginner, a designer. Oh my heavens, that's challenging. So it assumes no design and purpose. It challenges, that's what it challenges anyway. It challenges the reigning paradigm, we call it in science, of Darwinian evolution. Things don't die easily. Paradigms don't die easily. In fact, somebody said paradigms die one funeral at a time. In other words, the old view has to go and the new view, and that's how things work. And it also gives, the fourth point there is, it gives creation account credibility. And mainstream science doesn't like creation events. So that's why it's opposed, and with the result that intelligent design is characterized as pseudoscience, not science, but before any evidence can be offered. So if you define something out of existence and it shows evidence, how can the evidence be used to show that it's actual? You've already defined it out of existence. We do that all the time. Just turn on the television, right? They define the other team, whatever team you're on. It's out of existence. It's stupid. It's crazy, and so forth. But what do we want? I mean, thinkers want to know. Show us some evidence. Let us make our decision for ourselves. Let us think for ourselves. That's what we want to do, and we try to do that here. So Socrates asked, "Is this a fair assessment of intelligent design?" I say, no. I mean, it should be given a place to prove or disprove its case from evidence. So I'm what they call an evidentialist. I like evidence. I like evidence to make up decisions in my mind on certain things. And I'm going to take the evidence and I want to say, well, which direction is the pointing? Is it pointing that way? Or is it pointing that way? And as you view my videotapes, you'll see I almost always end them the same way. What do you think? Is it going this way or that way? Intelligent design is used already in science, so it shouldn't be opposed. There's no controversy about this kind of thing, right? I'm going to show you what I mean by it, how it's used in archaeology, how it's used in forensic science, CSI, crime scene investigation, how it's used in cryptography, how it's used in geology. It's even used in something called SETI. Who knows what SETI is? Yes. I just watched. My wife hadn't seen the movie, and she said, "Well, I'd like to see that." So we played it the other night and loved it. Loved it better the second time. It's called Contact. It was based on a novel by Carl Sagan, and we'll review some of this. Well, how is intelligent design used in archaeology? Boy, this was fascinating. I remember spending hours just staring and reading about the Rosetta Stone. It's in the British Museum. It's one of the most visited things that there are. I see heads shaking that have done that. And they say, what was it? Well, it was a decree around 200 BC written by an Egyptian king. And it was done in ancient Egyptian hieroglyphics. It was found during about 1799, I see here. And we couldn't decipher it because we didn't know ancient Egyptian hieroglyphics. But it looks like, to us, that was intelligently designed. I mean, we didn't think that it came from a sandstorm, right? Where you don't find something and you see hieroglyphics and you say, wind, erosion, blasted. No. I mean, come on. Come say. The neat thing about the Rosetta Stone, it was also inscribed in Greek at the time. So we could see the Greek, and we could see the hieroglyphics and did a mapping, and so an intelligence put it down on Rosetta Stone. It takes an intelligence to unpack that. How about in design detection? You arrive at the scene of the crime there, and dead body on the floor, revolver, fingerprints, footprints. I don't think the guy committed suicide, right? I think it was a murder. I think it was planned. There was some intelligence behind this kind of thing. We use intelligent design principles in forensic science. Data cryptography. I love the stories of the German Enigma, breaking the Enigma code in World War II. Bletchley Park, I think it was. Once they figured out that code, I mean, we knew how to protect our vessels. We knew where those U-boats were. We don't think that wasn't done intelligently, and it was put down as a code intelligently, and it was deciphered intelligently. How about geology? What happens when you see something like this? Well, you say, well, I know what that is. No. I want you to think deeply about it. What's different about those things in the center there than the mountains on both sides? There's something different about that. Well, what's different about it is we know, first of all, there's no natural cause. Talk about the probability of a natural cause creating those faces. Forget it, right? Zero. But those faces match something we independently know about. And those are the four faces of four presidents. So there's something going on here. We say that those faces were intelligently designed. We're going to go into this a little more deeply later. SETI. All right, what was so cool about SETI? SETI, they're listening out, and they did it at that very large array over in New Mexico. If you ever drive through that way, it's Socorro, it's really cool. And I'd love to visit it sometime. And they're listening for outer space, listening for signals. Well, they hear signals all the time. They hear signals, but are they intelligent signals? Well, sometimes they're periodic signals. I mean, it's a pulsar or something they hear. But that's not what they're listening for either, because that's trivial. I mean, that pulsar is just like. But we're looking for intelligent signals. We're looking for like Hamlet to be broadcast from outer space, something like that. We talked about that in one of the few past sessions too. But what they're looking for, this was, I thought, a really neat spin in the story, is looking for the prime numbers between 1 and 100. What does that mean? Who knows what the prime, I'm not going to call on you, I just want to see who knows what a prime number is. Oh, look at this, all right, see, these are thinkers here. So prime number is just a number between, at any number, if it's only divisible by itself in 1. Well, if you get a pattern, and the 100 numbers, first 100 numbers are in the white boxes there. If you get a pattern like 1, 2, 3, 7, 11, 13, 17, 19. If you got a pattern like that, that's no random occurrence. That's the mark of intelligence coming in. That's why they do things like looking for a prime number sequence. So we search the universe for things that show signs of intelligence. But what about biology? I mean, that's fine, all these things aren't living things. What about biology? Biology is the study of living things. Is there design and purpose in living things? Or did everything just evolve through natural selection? That's the question before us today. Let's take some intuition on our part here. Let's think about things that fly. All right, so there's two things that fly. Are they intelligently designed? Well, I look at the one on the left there, I say, well, of course. I mean, how about the one on the right? Is that intelligently designed? Most of us would probably say yes, I mean, just based on our intuition, but biology says no. I see some puzzled faces. It says it's an illusion. Design is an illusion on that. Nature created the hummingbird through evolution. Okay, well, let's look for evidence. All right, evidence of the Boeing. 6 million parts, stacks, libraries of assembly instructions and design engineered blueprints and so forth. Where's the design blueprints for the hummingbird? Bird brain has more than 6 million parts. It has 100 million neurons just in its half-gram brain to begin with. And those neurons are all wired for it to do what it's doing. Is that an indication of design? Or is that an illusion? How about the living cell? We talked about the living cell for quite a couple, 2 or 3 sessions in last session. That on the left there is a living cell. Those are organelles, living organisms that work together. They're system components for engineers. The cell is a system of systems, very complicated systems. In the middle there is a single cell bacterium. It has a little squiggle on the end there, that's its tail. And if you look at this under the microscope, that thing goes around looking for its food by rotating that tail. Biologists, molecular biologists have looked at this now and said, that's no just tail, that's not flopping around chaotically. That thing's an outboard motor, it's designed. It has a drive shaft and it has a bushing and stator and propeller and so forth. Intelligent design proponent would say that's design, that's purposeful arrangement of parts. We found out that the living cell is just not a blob of protoplasm. Back in the 19th century, we didn't know what life was, and we didn't know what a cell was. We thought a cell was just a little blob of jello-like substance, and we even thought that flies came out of rags, dirty rags in the corner. And we found out that life comes from life, and then we found out that it's not a blob of protoplasm. It's the most amazing device that's ever been assembled. The cell is a purposeful arrangement of parts. All those organelles are purposely arranged, or wouldn't work. It's the most complex, completely integrated system of systems in the universe. Astronomers look at this kind of thing and say, our astronomy is nothing compared to that. Nothing compared to that. The cell is, and we have 100 trillion of those cells in our body. Whoa. The next one's a killer. Information. What's information? Well, information can be blah, 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 or it can be to be or not to be. That is the question. 130,000 words in Hamlet. They're all perfectly arranged. They've been designed. We find that level of information inside the cell. How did it get there? Who put it there? Intelligent design proponents say that shows design and purpose. Has the most elegant engineering that's ever been discovered. It's a system of systems. We've discovered how these systems function. We've discovered that it's designed. It's irreducibly designed. If you break one of it, and the rest of the cells go manufacture some more stuff. But but it disappears. You understand what its purpose is. Each one of those little organelles has a purpose, like each one of the functions of our body has a purpose. I always call this one the killer, because back in the 50s, that's Crick and Watson discovering the structure of the DNA molecule. And what's in the DNA molecule? It's a computerized information system. That chart there is a genetic code. It's a code, just like the Enigma code. And it's perfectly arranged. And if that stuff is off, it has all kinds of backup systems, so it can be off, and as we know from diseases and so forth, the body can heal and so forth. But if it's off in the wrong way, that code then is broken and life ceases. Intelligence is the only known source that produces coded information. We don't know of any other source. Think about if there's any other source that you know of presents coded information. Well, I hear things like, well, snowflake is coded. I mean, look, it's beautiful and so forth. Trivial. Just like the pulsar taps. Did it sorts information pieces that could be randomly selected. But string 150,000 characters together to get Hamlet. Now you're talking about real information, what they call complex specified information. The engineering, any of you are engineers, wow. I mean, you look inside the cell, here's what they see. They see the complexity of New York City. New York City, in one single cell. You have manufacturing facilities, you have transportation systems, you have waste treatment facilities, you have chemical treatment plants, you have power plants, all coordinated from the DNA, which is inside the nucleus, which is even a smaller part of the cell, which is the control room. So Socrates asked, Socrates likes to think deep about this kind of stuff. He says, is this just chance working through natural selection? Or is it more reasonable to conclude that it's been designed? Now, intelligent design isn't something that just popped on the scene today. It's been around, goes way back to the Greeks. Excuse me. The Greeks didn't look at just what something was and how it worked. Aristotle was famous for doing that. And we used that fresco that's hanging in the Vatican, right, Tom?
Yes.
Vatican, yeah. Looking forward to seeing that. It's Aristotle and Plato, and they're having an argument because Aristotle is pointing down and he's saying, I want to know what that is and how it works. And Plato says, aha, I do too. But I also don't want to know first principles. I want to know what designed it, what its purpose is. Those four questions were always the four questions the Greeks asked. They didn't think that they knew anything until they had answers to those four questions. So to know something to them meant knowing what's called the four causes in philosophy. So science accepted design and purpose in biology as a legitimate course of study until the end of the 19th century. What do you think happened at the end of the 19th century?
Microscope?
The Cubs won the pennant, right? Darwin's theory came out and said nature could create life on her own without design and purpose through biological evolution. And that's been the modus operandi of science. And I'm not picking on this, I'm just saying this is how science operates today, how biology operates today. So if there's any claims of intelligence in biology, it has to overcome this modus operandi that science is in, which is called materialism. And this has been challenged for the 150 years. That's why this is pulling in two different directions. But you don't hear about you hear a lot about the evolution, but you don't hear about the pull against it through design and purpose. In the 1990s, there's so much scientific evidence with all the machines, the electron microscope, we saw the cell, all the things we discovered. My goodness, and four individuals, I'll call these the four horsemen of the intelligent design movement. They wrote books, and then they got together at a place called the Discovery Institute in Seattle. A public scholar, Philip Johnson, who's a law professor at Berkeley, tremendous mind on legal reasoning, about evidence. How do you get to a verdict from what evidence is? And he wrote something called Darwin on Trial. If you really want to know the background of this, read any of these 4 books to get started, and then read them all. But he did from the reasoning part. The biochemist Michael Behe was a molecular biologist, and he's the one that looked inside the cell of the bacteria flagellum, the little tail, and he said, that's no purposeless thing. That's no random thing. That's an outboard motor. That has design and purpose. Then the mathematician came on and published his design inference and said, you have to have, and he gave all of a sudden complexity a mathematical face, which was important. Then the philosopher of science came on from Cambridge and wrote the signature of the cell. And I'll just go briefly through what these folks were saying. On the legal reasoning side, Johnson came up and said, you know what? Evolution is more propped up by philosophy, the philosophy of materialism, than it is by scientific evidence. So there's assumptions that evolution has taken place, and then evolution is built on top of the assumption. He says, in legal reasoning, here's how we do it. We get evidence on both sides. We get evidence on both sides. What's the evidence for it? And then we hear that evidence, and then we vote for and against. And let the evidence decide for itself which way you take the points. But he also claimed, and this became really contentious, let's put it that way, that this is being hidden from us. What do you mean by hidden from us? Well, in the schools, for example, you don't hear anything about this. As a matter of fact, you'll hear that you cannot talk about evidence against evolution because there isn't any. It's a fact. Well, once you assume something's a fact without kind of evidence, that cuts off debate, doesn't it? Pretty quickly. So evidence for design is being hidden from general consumption. So that's why he wrote the book, and that's why this movement is gaining. That's why I'm on board with getting the information out on this, so Socrates can ask the questions and you can decide for yourself. Behe, the biochemist, says living systems. There's an electron microscope picture of the bacteria flagellum, that little tail that's on there, on the top back of the bacteria. He says that's an outboard motor, and he showed what the design is, and he said design can be detected. How do you detect it? Well, it's a purposeful arrangement of parts. We'll talk about that too a little bit more. When you see a purposeful arrangement of parts, you think, yeah, it's design. What happened? Well, mind acted on it. Design cannot be produced by stepwise evolution. This became very controversial because if you know anything about the Darwinian process, it's step by step by step by step by step over long periods of time. Well, what you need, Behe says, is for that motor to work, just like you do in any engineering project, it all has to be there at one time. It has to follow the blueprint. If it doesn't follow the blueprint, it doesn't work. You even use the mousetrap, 6 parts in the mousetrap. Well, if you have only three of the parts, you don't get half the mice. You don't get any mice, you get 0. That's called irreducible complexity. It has to all be there at one time. It can't be there in a stepwise fashion. So he says the cell is designed. The mathematician said the cell is designed. I can prove it, or I can show it anyway, by the mathematics of it. And he came up with formulas called complex specified information, CSI, which eliminates the possibility that natural law could have done it on her own, and eliminates the idea that chance could have done it over, I don't care how many trillions of years you want to talk about it, it couldn't happen. So design is the only other option we have. So design is detectable. Stephen Meyer comes along, and he's very approachable as far as reading his book. I see the signature in the cell. I think that's it, sitting over there. Information is fundamental. Just like matter and energy is fundamental to the universe, information is fundamental. What is information? Information is a purposeful arrangement of parts that we understand. It's a function of mind. And he shows that function exists in the DNA in the cell. So, how can we conclude design? Well, here's a simple three-step process. We observe something. We observe a pattern of purposeful arrangement of parts. Here's a purposeful arrangement of parts in that stand over there. Okay. Did that just happen? Well, we observe that it's irreducibly complex. In other words, if any one part is missing, it doesn't work. We observe that the pattern matches an independent configuration of design and purpose. Just like we saw Mount Rushmore, we said that matched something that's already known to be designed. If it matches that, and it also has low probability of occurrence, and it has the mathematics to go with it, and it's a purposeful arrangement of parts, we can conclude design. We can conclude the design part of intelligent design. But how do we conclude the intelligent part of intelligent design? Only minds arrange parts to achieve a purposeful function. That's a fundamental property of mind. When we see a purposeful arrangement of parts, we recognize that a mind has acted. Evolution has no design goal, no purpose, no mind inside. It's chance plus time over a long period of time. So the proponents of intelligent design conclude intelligent design in that manner. Well, they can do it, they're all experts, right? We're listening to experts all the time, right? Can I do it? Can you do it? Can you conclude design? Well, let's try it. Let's try it out. These three principles here. Let's try out can we see a pattern to what I'm going to show you here? It says it's a purposeful arrangement of parts. Can we see that it's highly complex, more so than that this is much more complex than that? And does it match something that we know is already know independently, not dependently, but independently, that matched that's been designed? Let's take the eye. Wow, okay, the eye, you look at it, it's a system of lenses, system of camera, and it interacts with the brain, all right? Well, how complex is it? It's highly complex. 130 million receptors, 8 million colors we can differentiate with the eye. It's a lens system, like our telescope. It's a lens system. Binoculars, a lens system. It's a camera. Right? It's a computer. Are those designed? Yeah. So if I throw those things together or put them in a bag and shake them up, I don't expect an eye to come out of that over 1 trillion years. There's no stepwise Darwinian process that's going to produce the human eye. It's connected to the brain. We're going to be talking about that, what it means to be human. I'm going to look into the brain in one of the future sessions here. What's the pattern? Is that a pattern of purposeful arrangement of parts? Is that complex? Does that match something? Yeah, 3 pounds. Wow. My brain's more like that size there. Very compact. It's easier on me. It's amazing, right? And we can even sit in a session like this and think about that. Think about these kind of things in this little thing here. And it's 1 trillion neurons inside there with 100 trillion connections. Didn't even exist, how old am I? 39? Didn't exist 40 years ago. 100 trillion connections of calculation, 100 million trillion calculations per second. Wow. Here, this design needs no introduction. Pattern of arrangement of parts, complexity, yes, match, you name it. How about the 5 senses? On and on. From one cell that starts 100 to 100 trillion, and it happens over a lifetime, and then I lose these cells, and it reproduces itself. So today's topic, so far, this is kind of like a midpoint review, checkpoint for your own mind here. Does nature reveal design and purpose? Are there fingerprints on certain elements of nature that reflect a creator? What do you think? There's a concept in science called the mind of God. Now, this is not a religious term that's being used. This is a term of art. It's a metaphor. But every serious scientist, over time, that studies anything like what we just looked at before comes to the point where this is mind-boggling. I don't know where to go with this. And we call it the mind of God in science. Where materialistic science says that design is illusion, that what you see is not designed. Appearance of design can be explained by material processes, and that everything was created by natural law. After a while, even the originator of the structure of DNA, Francis Crick, just said, this is mind-boggling. It has to come from outer space. He has a theory called directed panspermia, where spores came to the, and he's an atheist, so this has nothing to do with religion, but he just said, this is just so unbelievable, the mind of God. So it has to be a superior intelligence somewhere, somehow, wiring this stuff together, a transcendental reasoning power. And scientists throughout the ages, whether they're believers or unbelievers or in the middle, whatever, let's start with Isaac Newton, maybe considered the greatest scientist of all time. His theories still just mind-boggle us, how we can have gravitational action at a distance. He looks at the planets and he says, the most beautiful system of the sun, planet, and comets could only proceed from the counsel and domination of an intelligent and powerful being. Fast forward to Albert Einstein. Albert Einstein was a secular Jew, was not a religious man, didn't believe in a personal God, and yet it was blown away he said the only thing incomprehensible about the universe is that it's comprehensible. Think about that. The only thing incomprehensible is that it's comprehensible. He said, quote, the harmony of natural law reveals an intelligence of such superiority that compared with it, all the systematic thinking and acting of human beings is utterly insignificant reflection. Stephen Hawking and Roger Penrose, great, unbelievable scientists. They're the ones, anybody see the theory of everything? I love that. It was kind of a romantic story. Siri, why are you talking to me? She's working on it, whatever it is. Their equations gave us the beginning of the universe, gave us the mathematical formulations for what's called the singularity, where everything just started at one point in time. He spent the first decades of his career proving that there was a beginning to the universe, and he spent the last several decades proving that there wasn't a beginning, because he didn't like the implications of what he was finding out. And he says, well, but as long as the universe had a beginning, we could suppose it had a creator. And Penrose Stephen died an atheist. Penrose is probably, we'll say this, that he doesn't know, he's an agnostic, but he believes in mathematical formula. That's what I used to believe when I was in school, when I was a physics major, that there was some hidden formula somewhere we're going to come across. Maybe there is, they'll dig in the cave and all of a sudden there it is, the secret to life, the creator formula. They do work on the theory of everything, but the theory of everything is just the physical thing. How do you explain the mental and the spiritual side of human beings? When we talk about what it means to be human, that's where we're going to go. But Penrose says mathematical results cannot be a coincidence. They must come from higher reason. And that reason is the assumption that the mathematical theory describes nature. I mean, can you imagine mathematics, those little squiggles on paper and everything actually match what goes on out there and down there? How does that happen? It's amazing. For non-believers, it's called almost a miracle. That's the term of art that they use, almost a miracle, or the mind of God. But then you put that in the closet. You know, we're opening up the closet. We're trying to figure this out a little bit on an evidential basis. This was one of my favorite stories when I was in graduate school. Anthony Flew was the greatest scientific, or atheist, I should say, at the time, most lauded, I should say. 15 years, 16 years, he dominated with the reasoning for supplying. And he was a really nice man. I mean, this is a really nice atheist. And, but he I want to paint him in the most favorable light I can. But he was a formidable opponent because I wasn't an atheist. I was a believer, right? So I would read his stuff. The best way of learning something is to understand the best argument the other side has, right? So I would read Flew and say, well, yeah, that's great. Because he followed evidence, he followed reason, he believes in the power of reason, the power of mind. And toward the end of his life, he changed his mind. And he changed his mind on evidence. This was not a spiritual experience. In fact, he never became a religious person. He became what we call a deist. That's somebody who believes in what I'm going to read here, that he believed in his book. But he didn't have a personal relationship with a God. And his path of inquiry, but he was an honest man. He looked at the evidence and he saw these amazing discoveries over the last 60 years of the 20th century. And he subjected it to his reasoning power, and he came to the conclusion, number one, design in nature, he saw a design in nature, suggests the existence of a cosmic designer. Number two, the universe exists. Big Bang. I mean, all of a sudden it exists. It wasn't infinitely old, it existed, it had a beginning. It's so elegantly fine-tuned to support life that it suggests the mind of a creator. We actually worked out some probability calculations in one of the sessions last year. It was kind of fun, one in how many zeros or whatever. And then number three, mindless matter. Mindless matter could not produce beings with intrinsic ends. In other words, being goal-oriented like we all are. They couldn't produce elements of self-replication. I mean, not only do these elements come out of supposedly nothing, they self-replicate. Wow. And coded chemistry. Wow. What he's talking about there is the information they find inside the cell. For those three reasons, he wrote a book in 2004, There Is a God. Where he used to say, there is no God, there is a God. In fact, I think one of our classmates, she's overseas right now, she took it with her. I have that in the lending library there. So what has been materialistic mainstream science reaction to this declaration here, this reaction to intelligent design? Is intelligent design welcome to the table for at least evaluation or consideration or observation or giving an argument? Can it give a testimony? Can it be called in to give a testimony? And the answer is no. And this happens a lot in any discipline where there's things that a worldview that's firmly entrenched. And usually what you find out is when these entrenched worldviews are there, change passes very slowly in three stages. First, it's completely ignored. I mean, you don't want to give it any credibility whatsoever. Then you enter into a stage where it doesn't go away because the data doesn't go away. The data's there. The data's and research, and people like those four horsemen that I showed you, now there's thousands of scientists doing this kind of work on intelligent design now, and asking questions that aren't answered. And that gets to a point where it becomes a pest. It's like Socrates. He was a pest. He was called the gadfly, because you couldn't just say yes to him or no, or give him a simple answer. You say, well, what makes you say that? Why do you believe that? I drive my wife crazy on that because she'll say something. Well, check it out. It's my favorite thing. Check it out. Why do you say that? So stage 2 is now it becomes violently opposed because it's entrenched. It's almost like a political organization. It's entrenched. So intelligent design is right now in this stage 2. Finally, the data doesn't go away. The paradigm changes. Science changes. 100 years ago, we had an infinite universe. Now we have a finite universe. So, and all of a sudden, it's on the scene, and everybody knows. Oh yeah, I knew that. We do that all the time, don't we? Oh yeah, something complex, and I didn't really believe, but once I absorbed it, oh yeah, I knew that. Finally accept, and it's self-evident. Oh, it's self-evident. ID is actually vilified. I mean, I had to choose my word carefully. What am I going to use? Vilify is probably a good word. Why? Because materialism can't be challenged. There's a set of rules that govern the scientific academy called methodological naturalism. Methodological naturalism. But all it is just a set of rules that are dogma. And dogma can be in religious dogma, it can be historical dogma, it can be dogma of your organization or whatever, but it's dogma. It's not necessarily provable, or even the evidence might be against it, but here's how it works. And you better abide by the rules. And the materialism dogma is nothing exists except matter. How do you explain this? Well, we're going to be talking about that in the future. How do you explain that? Well, how you explain it is this is just matter and wires, and once we understand all the firing of the neurons and everything, and that's how we explain it. There is no design and purpose in nature. It's so intelligent design is a pseudoscience, and it violates the rules. How do they treat the ID scholars? Poorly. Where do we go for our information right away? Wikipedia! Isn't that how we get our information? He who controls Wikipedia controls the information. Go to Wikipedia and look up any of these guys. These are top scholars. If they were on the other side, they'd be getting Nobel Prizes or whatever. But because they're on the wrong side of the argument here, they're vilified. Every one of you look up every name and it'll say, a proponent of intelligent design pseudoscience. Branded right from the beginning. Doesn't even tell about their PhDs or double PhDs or research results or whatever. And what does it say about the organization that's the think tank behind this? Discovery Institute. I get a kick out of how it states it. It says, quote, a politically conservative nonprofit think tank that advocates the pseudoscience concept of intelligent design. And I don't care what end of the political spectrum you're on, but what does conservative nonprofit have to do with anything about the science? I don't know. What do they say about Anthony Flew? They don't like the 4 horsemen of intelligent design. They don't like Anthony. They loved Anthony before when he was on their side. As soon as you're a convert, you've had this, maybe some of you had some of this experience. As soon as you're on the other side, you're toast. In fact, even subject to rumor. I mean, right in the Wikipedia, look up Anthony Flew. He converted to deism, which just means a belief in God, general belief in God. Allegations, and they show this is just nasty rumor. I mean, this guy's a sweetheart. Allegations are that Flew's intellect had declined due to senility. That's the Wikipedia input for Anthony Flew. And then you had the pronouncements by the big organizations. And as soon as the National Academy of Sciences puts its stamp of approval on materialism, every other organization follows it. So the reason I tell you that is because some of you are going to go home and say, oh, I want to see that. I'll look up intelligent design, and the first entry that comes up is the Wikipedia entry, right? So you click on that and you think, what's he talking about? That's a bunch of malarkey. No, think for yourself. Look for yourself. What are they protecting us from by doing this kind of thing? Well, they say they're protecting us from ignorance. science deniers. They're protecting us from Wikipedia. We're losing our technological edge if we believe in anything except what the Academy tells us to believe in. We're going to get back into the dark ages of superstition and go back to medieval darkness. And heaven forbid, bring religion and make it credible. In fact, the last 20 years, because this has been so vilified, that there's a whole new movement called the New Atheist movement, and these are real strong intellectuals that write books on not only is religion not worthy to deal with, but religion is evil. God in creation, mythology, we'll be back to that. We'll be back to supernatural explanations. And then there's a lot of cheap shots, The idea is creationism in a cheap tuxedo. I get a kick out of that one. But we don't need protection. We need truth. We need to be thinking for ourselves. We need to be thinking deeply about stuff. We don't need groupthink. But if you want a job, you better not bring this on to the job, this kind of thinking on it. Science should be open-minded. Inquiry, seeking the best explanation based on evidence, following the path wherever it leads. But it has to get to the table. So in stage 2, you don't get to the table yet. So how do we explain origins? Well, there's only 2 starting points. There's no God of any kind, or there's some God of some kind. That's what we're discussing in Socrates, and we'll be doing that in the following months. Since neither hypotheses, I'll call them hypotheses, since none of them, neither can be proven, both hypotheses should be on the table, right? That's what Philip Johnson was saying as a legal scholar. Evidence, collect evidence, and decide for yourself. Let them contend for truth based on the evidence. 50, 60 years ago, Time magazine, when Darwinian evolution was proven as a fact at the time, supposedly, at least by the proponents of it, it said, it's a fact and the verdict's in, quote, man is the result of purposeless and natural processes that did not have him in mind. That was one of the popular quotes at the time. George Gaylord Simpson was one of the spokesmen for the evolutionary biologists at the time. In these 50 years since then, all the stuff that I've just showed you today has become known. And what I'm suggesting, are we going to see something like this now as a contention? Is atheism dead? With Anthony Flew, well, there is a God. I changed my mind. My discovery of the divine has been a pilgrimage of reason and not faith. So, with that, I'm running over, unfortunately, but I'm going to end it right here. I'm going to say, does nature reveal design and purpose? Are there fingerprints of a creator? Decide for yourself. You can tell that I'm favorably impressed by intelligent design, but I had to make the case because the case has not been made. So this is something you decide for yourself. Has science uncovered evidence of a creator? I say that at least we should all agree that design and purpose will be back on the table for it to contend for itself.
With part 4 now complete, we finish section 5 on the origin of species. Next, we pick up the most important topic in biology. Who are we as human beings? This presentation begins with the big section, what does it mean to be human? Are we just super evolved animals, or are we a special creation? We will investigate whether or not there's a hard line between the animal kingdom and the kingdom of human beings. We've already examined the biological evidence for Darwinism and showed that it's wanting. So please go to the website and review that video cast. There is inadequate biological evidence to justify human evolution. But in this section, we examine what further evidence will help us evaluate if human beings are truly unique. Do human beings possess something other than a physical body? Do they possess an immaterial soul? What does science have to say about that? What does science have to say about the soul? I'm sure you'll find this topic fascinating. Few even dare to explore it from a scientific viewpoint. And with this section, we start shifting our focus from questions regarding our origins to questions regarding our destiny. If we ever hope to develop an answer for our really big question, why am I here? We need to first feel comfortable from an evidentiary point of view regarding both origin and destiny. So, hope to see you back here next time to continue pondering, what does it mean to be human? What does the evidence say? What direction does it point? I'm Stuart Orr. See you then.